Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation TV with your host, Jeff Charles. About a week after a white supremacist terrorist carried out an attack in Buffalo, New York, America has seen another mass shooting, this time at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. Both tragedies have elicited another debate over gun control. But one of the sticking points about this situation is the conduct of the officers responding to the shooting. I have with me right now Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, Scott Cosenza, to try to make sense of this whole thing. Welcome to the program, Scott.
Hi, thanks, Jeff.
Now let's just get into it. Now, more information is coming out about the situation and how the police responded to it, and it's been showing that it looks like they've been mishandling the situation. Can you kind of give us a rundown of what happened?
Well, mishandling is about the most charitable word a human being could use to describe what appears to have happened there. The best information we have at the time of this recording is that the school district police chief, Pete Arredondo, who is apparently a lifelong resident of the town, was the commander on scene who not only prevented police officers from going in and saving the children who were in the school, but also then was comfortable with directing the use of force against parents and others who would have done that work for them. So not only are the police not doing their job, which is to say, presumably that's why they're paid such handsome, overall compensation packages, because they're obviously to put themselves in harm's way to protect society. But not only in refusing to do that, but then preventing the citizens from acting on their own to protect the most vulnerable, their children. So it's the worst possible situation.
I mean, I heard stories of them putting mothers in handcuffs. I think at least one guy got tased trying to go in.
Tased, pepper sprayed, handcuffed, you name it. Anything they could do to actually, instead of, again, rescuing the victims, preventing their rescue. It's beyond disgraceful, Jeff. It's madness.
Now, one thing that I heard, and I've been kind of keeping up with it, but I don't think I've been keeping up with it as much as you have as far as the police are concerned. I thought I saw a headline where the officers were saying that they thought the threat was over, and that's why they didn't rush in, because they thought that the shooting had stopped or something like that. Or what excuse are they giving?
Well, what we've heard from the Texas Department of Public Safety spokesperson who addressed this is that the reasoning why Arredondo gave the orders that he did was that he thought it was a barricade situation and not an active shooter situation. Now, we know that there were gunshots going off at that time, and if they were, as been reported, AR-15 shots that were not suppressed, well, then that's pretty much loud enough that you would think that that's not likely to be the story. We do have to wait until we hear more about it, but it's still not a good reason. We're ever since Columbine, where police waited to go in before they had some kind of SWAT team I think they were waiting for, which took forever and resulted in massive increase in the amount of life lost. The story for law enforcement and the direction for law enforcement has been very quickly, no waiting around a while, take what you got and move in and do what you can to eliminate the suspect. And even the Texas live shooter sort of manual or training information that we've seen, reported on says that first responder lives are not to be considered above the potential victim lives. That's their job, is to go into harm's way. But that's not what we saw in Texas, obviously.
Yeah. So, I mean, and also, I mean, you mentioned like the gunshots. Yes, they would have heard that, but there were kids calling 911 saying that the guy was there shooting people. So what, I mean, and you can't read minds, and we probably got to wait for more information. What do you suspect actually went wrong here? Like, why did it take him over 40 minutes to get in there? I mean, it sounded like you said since Columbine, it seemed like we learned our lesson, but we saw this happen at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in Parkland, Florida as well. So what do you think is happening here?
I can't be put upon to supply reason where it seems like none existed, Jeff. That's the only thing I can think of, is that there was the absence of reason. After September 11th, I think all traveling Americans sort of came to their own realization, or collectively, that we knew that if anybody presented themselves on a plane like they might be a threat to that plane, like nobody's going to wait around to see, like, gee, is this guy just off his meds a little bit, or are they a terrorist? Like, no, we're going to get you into your seat and use our, shoelaces if we need to tie you down or something like that, because it's just not the risks, but the stakes. That's something that gun owners often talk about with carrying a gun. When people say you don't need a gun, and we say, well, yeah, it's not that there's a high risk I'll need a gun. It's just that the stakes are so high that if I do need one, that's, and the same thing, I liken it to wearing a seatbelt. When I get in the car and go for a drive, I don't think I'm going to need that seatbelt, but the stakes are high enough that I put it on anyway. And the same thing should be true for any of these school or public shooting, mass shooting incidents. They should go in and worry about everything else later. They have to make sure that the threat is neutralized. And unless they know, not believe, but know that it's neutralized, that's the only thing that seems to make any sense, Jeff.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, those things are the things that you have and hope that you never need it. And you probably will never need it. But when you do, you need it. Yeah. So, one thing I find interesting, that leads me to this question, and I don't know if you've been seeing this too, but one thing I find very interesting is that the anti-gunners are using this, the performance of the police officers, to claim that ordinary citizens don't need guns and they can just rely on the police. That's what they always said in the past. But now they're using the police's handlings of this situation to argue that a good guy with a gun can't save lives during a mass shooting. Right. Which is it?
Well, not when a police officer with a gun, basically holds the gun to their head and says, "Don't go rescue your kid," which is what we essentially had here. The truth is that those arguments on the sort of gun grabber side is they will just use anything to indicate that there should be no guns, right, or that people shouldn't have guns, and they're generally bankrupt, a lot of those arguments, I think. You could say that it might be better from their perspective if effective means of firing a gun were never invented, but they have been invented, and we know that there are hundreds of millions in private hands in America, and to the extent that that's the case, gun control efforts just simply, I don't think, are going to work in terms of stopping this. And one of the things I think we have to always add to these conversations now, Jeff, in 2022, is that we're very soon going to have the case where people can print guns at home, and all restrictions on owning or buying a firearm are going to be null and void, because you're just going to be able to print it. And so what are you going to do then? So we have to keep, and stop the shootings and the desire to murder, rather than worry about the technology, because the technology is going to get past our or the government's ability to control it very soon.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it is at the very root of it. It's a heart issue. People are always going to find ways around it, so we have to deal with the heart. But that kind of makes me wonder. I mean, we've been through this so many times over the past 2 decades. What is the likelihood that this particular tragedy, or even the one that happened the week before, will actually result in real solutions?
Well, I think that the propping of doors open by the teachers and such, maybe that actually is likely to change. In other words, I don't know that we're going to get any major gun control laws that might make a difference, but I mean, I'm old enough, I hate to even admit it, but boy, it was 1990 or 1989 when I was a sophomore in high school or junior in high school. And I distinctly remember they replaced all the doors in the whole high school to the kind where they cannot be opened from the outside. They could only be pushed open from the inside, with the exception of the main entrance. Mm-hmm. And like I said, that was in the late 80s or 1990 as a security measure. So the idea that that's what we know can help secure a school is not new information. But it only works if people follow the rules. We don't know yet. I haven't seen widely reported why this teacher propped the door open, whether it was to facilitate, delivery or airflow, or who knows what any of the reasons might be. But having that single point of entry that can then be at least looked upon and guarded makes a lot of sense. So that's one practical thing that I think might actually result from this tragedy. I don't mean to laugh at the tragedy. I just mean,
no, I know.
What practically can be done.
Yeah, I mean, that actually helps me, because I wasn't very optimistic, but I mean, that's something. I mean, it's not what I think needs to be done, but it's something towards that direction. So last question, if you had to guess, Dems are pushing gun control right now. Schumer already said he's going to force a vote on it. Republicans, lawmakers are meeting with Democrats. Do you think the Democrats are really going to be able to get enough Republicans on board with any major gun control legislation?
You know, before the story came out about how the police, their malfeasance in this incident, I suspected that might be true. But it seems like the tides have been changing and the winds here, with the story changing from one of, you know, that's what people are left with, is this gun control story, right? And there's this urge and impetus among all people of goodwill to do something. Seeing fourth graders massacred is about like the worst thing you can imagine, you know, one of. And so there's even if it's unlikely to yield success, it's just sort of an emotional response for a lot of people. And then when they're, you know, spurred on by those who I think know better, but are trying to move the ball on legislation for their political interests, I thought we would get it. But now I don't think so, Jeff. I think because of the police malfeasance issue, the gun rights folks are going to be likely to sort of embolden their natural supporters in Congress, the Republicans, to say, well, this isn't really about guns. And of course, the shooter passed a background check. So the idea that we need a background check because of this incident, well, that just doesn't really pass the test of, you know, it would have made a difference in the first place. Also, I'm personally bought into it, you know, fingers crossed. So obviously we don't take a position on that at One Generation Away because of our nonprofit status. But personally speaking, we can all have our have our opinions about this. And I just mean to put that out there in terms of my biases rather than reporting.
You gotcha. That makes sense. I mean, and you know, maybe this will actually, I mean, whenever something like this happens, we're always looking for answers, and hopefully this development will, as unfortunate as it is, will help us bring about some real solutions. And hopefully we're wrong about our pessimism on this, but hopefully this will bring something about. But thanks for joining me, and I'm sure we'll be talking about these issues again.
Thank you.
And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news and analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Just go to LibertyNation.com on your browser, or hit Rumble, YouTube, or check out our Liberty Nation News Roku channel. I'm Jeff Charles. Thanks for watching. This program is a production of LibertyNation.com, where truth is making a comeback.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on.